Hey everyone, we've had another Kickstarter update from Isaac and addressing some of the feedback that the community came up with for the changes to the designs of the cards and the player mats. So usually I wouldn't make a video like this, but I wanted to make just a short video kind of going over my thoughts now with the new update and seeing where we are 2 weeks later and what has changed essentially. So let's just get straight into it. So first up, we've just got information on the pledge manager. Make sure you filled out the pledge manager if you haven't already, otherwise you won't get your game. So check your delivery information, make sure it's going to the right place. Just sort it out, people. It's very important, and if you want your game, you got to do it. So the only thing that we really care about though from this update is going to be these changes to the looks. So you can see here that they've changed the kind of frame, which was something that I wasn't such a fan of from the first time. So let's take a look. Josh has been iterating quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and so he wanted to give us a latest look, not only of the Bone Shaper, but 3 more classes as well, the Drifter, Banner Spear, and Deathwalker. This is great because I thought maybe we might just be making some assumptions on the new iconography and the card design just based on the Bone Shaper. Just perhaps that character wasn't the best character to show it off. So now we're going to get to look at some more characters, which is great, so we can get a little bit more perspective on these changes. So first off, they say that they've weathered the borders to result in a more rustic, less sci-fi vibe. So let's go across to the cards. You can get a link to these cards was in towards the bottom of the Kickstarter. So we've got this kind of weathered effect here on the yellow strips on the side here for the Banner Spear. You've also got this kind of, it's now more kind of a rugged shape, if you like. It's not as straight. It's kind of rough cut stone, if you like, that kind of goes around the edges. You've got the nice sort of runic lettering there. And you've also got, yeah, like, again, it kind of goes up into these sort of corners. So this is much better in my opinion. This is a big improvement on what it was. I still feel like there's some sort of like, you know, quite very sort of straight edges and things inside here. This is all very angular and straight, but to be honest, this information here, I think it should be laid out in a way that is visible and clear, whereas, you know, this is set dressing around the edges of the cards, and I think it should fit the theme of the game. So overall, I really like this change. I think it's a great change. And if we go back to the Kickstarter update and we scroll down a little bit, you can see that it kind of matches the size of the cards now, and also it matches the player boards. They've done a bit of weathering there on the player board design too, so it all fits together nicely. So yep, that's a really good change in my opinion. And to be honest, that pretty much, that's the halfway house that I was sort of thinking of, and that's really done a good job. So thumbs up from me. I love the change. I think it looks really good. So next though is onto the more kind of more difficult subject, which is of course the main ability icons and how the ability icons in general, right? So they've increased the size of the main ability icon so that it would be clearer at a glance what the main point of it is, then line that up with the regular effects, as this is particularly important for range and number of targets. You want to clearly and easily link your attack ability to its range and how many enemies you can target. Okay, so what we're talking about here is we're talking about the this symbol here. So you've got attacks here, you got movement, you've got strengthen and poison here, but you've also got heal here. So that's like a good sort of example of what they mean by making the main ability icon bigger, which I think is a good change, because you're just going to be able to immediately see that on the card and know what the card's about, rather than maybe getting lost in a mess of symbols and the glance value is lost. So yeah, that's a big plus for me, and that's a step in the right direction, definitely. We also wanted to link any condition information in an unobtrusive way that also makes it clear that it's still part of the ability. So we added a different border around these sections and connected them to the rest of the ability with a subtle line. So this is this kind of thing here, right? This kind of dotted line that goes around here and goes up. So let's go across to these cards, and I've got some sort of mixed feedback regarding these changes. So first off, on an ability like, so we can take this is a very simple ability, right? It's just heal 3, affect all allies. Great. The thing is that I'm a bit sort of confused as to why this text needs to be in a kind of solid background. I'm assuming it's because it's supposed to be part of the effect, or it's like it's mandatory, right? Yep. That's my name too. But yeah, it's one of those things. You have to do it. It's part of the action. This is what this does, right? So you can't, this isn't conditional in any way. This is just what this does. But it's quite a bit smaller than the main icon. And I think that this is great, picking out what this main icon does, but this is also very important information. And I'm not quite sure as to why this is in a border, because, I mean, you're always going to do this and this together. There's no reason why you wouldn't. Now, there may be certain cards, maybe that doesn't make sense, but let's just take a look at some more examples. So I've just, for example, here, you can see that, again, there's just one symbol here. Now, this card would pretty much be exactly the same as this in regular Gloomhaven, except you would have attack 3 written. You'd actually have the word attack, but actually this would be pretty much the same, except you would have this and you'd have Disarm written as well underneath, a little bit smaller, but you wouldn't have this kind of border. Now, I'm not really sure if this kind of background is very necessary. And the reason why I say that is because when we get to a card that has multiple different backgrounds, and right from the Kickstarter update, as soon as I saw this card, I could say this card was going to be problematic. So if we go to Incendiary Throw, so the reason why this becomes a little bit of an issue is that you can see here that they've got a good example of the new dotted line iconography for optional or conditional effects, things that you may consume an element for. They may happen if certain requirements are met, which is like this one, and you know, they may be something that you can choose to do or not do. So the thing is that this is a lot smaller than this, right? This range symbol is pretty small regarding this. I'm not a huge fan of the attack symbol being up here in the top left as well. I think it's been pushed that way. I think this is probably because the elemental symbols, which have now been moved from the corners into the bottom of the card, which I think is great, but probably a problem that's now caused is actually pushed all of this back up, which now means that this attack symbol, which was probably a lot lower on the card in a more prominent position, has now had to be tucked up there, which is a little bit awkward, I think. So for me, this is kind of small, and when I look at this card, my eye is immediately going to go to this area here because it's highlighted over the back of the card, right? This is the background. This is the background. This is like kind of above it, right, in the kind of foreground, and this is where my eye goes. And this is a great effect, don't get me wrong, but this is not what this card is, the essential information that you want from this card immediately. You want this information and you want this information. That's what you want. So for me, I feel like this kind of dotted background to me is actually drawing my eye to those areas of the cards perhaps a bit too much. It may even be worth flipping it around the other way, putting the dotted background on this area and leaving this one as having no border. But a border to me signifies importance, and this would immediately mean that this is quite important information. And if you have a look at this card, like this is obviously on my monitor, so it is very hard to make these sort of comparisons looking at a high res image on a monitor versus in your hand. But if you have a look at the cards like this, which is maybe like me looking at the card from a certain distance, and you can see here that immediately my eye is immediately drawn to the middle of that card. And if you're looking at that in that mix of cards there, those 4 cards that they've put out there, my eye is immediately drawn to that highlighted text in that border, because it looks like it's very important information because it's been highlighted. So that would be sort of my kind of my take on that. Also, I feel like there's a little bit of inconsistency with the way that this has been used in certain areas. So if we come and have a look at this card, which may just be it may just be a bit erroneous, and this may just need to be changed, and it's an oversight. I don't know. It could just be a bit of a mistake. However, so this card perfectly sort of shows a bit of an issue with this. So you've got attack 2, all attacks against you this round gain disadvantage, right? This is just you perform an attack 2, then, because that's what this line is, it's basically separating the ability out. So then all attacks against you this round gain disadvantages. This just means that you don't have to have done the 2 attack to take advantage of this. That's all that means. They're like 2 separate actions on the ability, right? So this basically you can do both. So this is fine, and this is how this has been templated pretty much since basic Gloomhaven. Now this is problematic because this says shield 2, then I have this optional effect which says this shield only applies to ranged attacks, which is weird because why would I, as an option or as a conditional, maybe want that to happen? So this is why I think that maybe this might be a bit of an oversight, but why has this been templated in such a different way to this? Surely this should just be text and not be in a border at all. Yes, it's linked to this, but it doesn't even really need this line here or anything there. It just needs this line of text, in my opinion. And that will be a much clearer templating of the card. So perhaps that's just because they haven't got around to tweaking all of these up yet, and this is just one that, oh yeah, we didn't change that one. I don't know, but for me, this is inconsistent wording with the rest of the card. So you'll see, you know, if you compare, for example, like this and, you know, and this, it's yeah, it's obviously one of them doesn't suit, right? One of the kind of other issues, and I think it's better really to illustrate it perhaps with a different character. I just found some Deathwalker cards that were a bit more problematic. So I think that this card's actually like is templated pretty well. I actually think that this is actually one of the better ones, I think. And I think it's to do with the fact that this symbol is up here on the same line, right? It's like line 1. This is a very well separated card because it's got attack 2, range 2, right? Key information, first line of the card, great. Then you've got this optional thing that you can do, but for some reason it's optional, but for some reason isn't in the background. But you can do this. I'm presuming you can still do the attack 2. You don't have to do this. So then you've got this, which gives you the attack, but it's not conditional. So again, a bit of a weird templating issue. I think that this is much better, like signifying what the attack does. But again, you got some weird templating inconsistencies with whether or not this is conditional or mandatory or for what, right? Just doesn't quite add up. And I think that a lot of this is stemming from these borders. This is the issue. They're kind of making this an issue, having these borders around things. I don't really understand why this needs to be here particularly. It's highlighting it, which is great, so it doesn't, you know, bring it to your attention, but also it's part of this attack. You know, this isn't in the box, so I feel like either this all should be in a box or none of this should be in a box, because this is like the base level of what this card does. The base thing this card does is attack 2, add range 2. Great. Any additional stuff may need to be in boxes, but this information does not necessarily need to be in a box, in my opinion. You've got wounds here on this one. Target all enemies occupying a hex with this. Again, it's just a bit weird having this information. Any enemy who moves into a hex with a shadow this round gains this. Not in a box, but the other one was in a box, right? You're starting to see that these boxes are a bit problematic. So this is a card, Black Barrage. So this is a card I actually flagged up as being a bit of an issue as well. So you got the issue here is you've got this range symbol is very small against this. Your eye is very much drawn to this information because it's highlighted. It's in a lighter, you know, it's a lighter background. It's the same background, I believe, as this, but it's just this dotted line kind of shows you that this is more important than this. In my opinion, that's how I see it. I see that this is highlighted information. This is not highlighted information. And I actually did some art, so art with MQ, here you go, on how I would actually prefer to have this information displayed on this card, right? You have the big attack symbol, you'd have a bigger range symbol that's fairly close to it. Then underneath, so this card is centered as well. That's another thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the cards are off center, perhaps because they want to go further this way, but I'm a kind of guy who likes to align their text in the middle. That's just me. But anyway, this is like how I would perceive this to be an absolutely fine change. You could have the little, you know, you could have all of this in a box if you want, or not in a box, and then you could just have this line coming down in the middle of the card having that information on, right? Which is kind of similar to how that shield card was displayed on the banner spear, right? We have a look at that again. I missed it. Where is it? I've missed it. We look at the shield card. There we go. So we look at the shield card again, right? It's in the middle, it comes down, and it's there, right? I can see that information working really well with this, right? You just have, instead it will be like attack 2, range 4, then this shield only applies to that. So you just have that information down there, right? So basically template this with just this card. I think would make it much clearer, in my opinion, on you to be able to pick these things out. But I've noticed on lots of these cards, they're not aligned sometimes, perhaps just to do with it, and that's another issue again. I mean, this to me, this is one of the most problematic cards, and this demonstrates a lot of the kind of problems. This is a good card to look at as a reference point, because you've got everything has been sort of had to be shifted up, and everything's kind of off center, which is a bit odd. Why not make this center to this? I don't know if it's just because there's not, maybe they don't want to have enough space here, or they want to fill out more of the gaps. They don't want as much dead space either side. I don't know, but this is a good one. And if you see the wound symbol here is larger than the range symbol here, right? And I think that that's a bit of a problem, considering that this is an optional benefit. So whereas this is the information that while it's in my hand, I need to like get quickly. Again, this could be a symptom of this moving from there to there too. I think this card's definitely been squished a little bit because of this. So that's worth bearing in mind. So those are my general thoughts. I do think the changes are good and they're definitely moving in the right direction, but there is some weird templating inconsistencies that I think need to be cleaned up. So whether or not this is just because it's a first draft and they haven't managed to get to it, I'm not convinced this stuff really needs to be in backgrounds. I think you can get rid of the backgrounds and make it bigger, and I think it would be just better in that respect. And then you could just only have backgrounds maybe for conditional extra effects, because then it's just like, hey, does it have a border around it? Yes, great, it's an optional effect. Okay, then that would perhaps clear up any kind of things. Wow, this one, does it have a light background? Yes, no. Does it have this? Does it have that? Right? You kind of get things sort of ironed out fairly early. We'll go over a few other little things. So the range symbol. It's interesting to see that the range symbol was not changed, considering that was probably the thing that most people gave feedback on and actually wanted it reverted back to the old bow symbol. So that's curious that they haven't changed that, because that was probably, as far as me from the outside looking in, seemed to be like the easiest thing to just change it back to a bow. People didn't like it, change it back to a bow. So it's a bit weird that they haven't done that. Now, I said in my other video, perhaps that's because there's grand things happening with the bow, and they're going to be using a bow elsewhere, and it's perfect for something else, and we just don't know about it. So it's very difficult for them to make a comment on it. But I thought it was interesting that wasn't addressed when it would have been probably a fairly simple thing to address. So that's curious. Perhaps they could just change the attack symbol if it's a ranged attack to be a bow, but then they would still need some way of indicating range. So if they changed this to a bow and left this as that would kind of work for me, I think. But then you would have two symbols that mean attack. Could be a bit problematic. So we'll see. So bit curious, but there's something to note. Another change that they've made is they've actually put the movement onto this side of the card. So it used to be over here, it's now moved here, and I think that's actually becomes a little bit muddy with this. So the way that you get the bottom right hand corner for like XP and burn effects, it kind of like merges into one. I think this could go the other side here, be absolutely fine. I've got no personally, just move it to the other side. Don't see it being too much of a problem. So that's a very small thing, but just something that I noticed. But apart from that, I think the changes have been pretty good. I think they're moving in the right direction. Just think that there needs to definitely be some changes to certain things. Try and bring them into the middle and make the range symbols really are, I think, probably the biggest thing to get right, in my opinion. Getting the range information to be big, bold, and for people to be able to see it, I think is important, and the targeting information. And I thought it was kind of curious because obviously, this is acknowledged here. Absolutely. And I do think that they have made some good improvements to it, but I still think it's a way off where it needs to be. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to for the card design from this update. Say the elemental infusions moving to the middle of the card, I think is great, but it's obviously pushed everything up, I think, in certain locations. So perhaps it's good that it's been moved, but perhaps that's going to cause other issues by doing so. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. So Isaac, acknowledges here that there was pushback on the all icons approach to the abilities, but they are going to be continuing moving forward with this design. So icons are the future. So words aren't coming back, even if we request them, want them, even if there's an outpouring. It sounds like they've made their mind up because they believe it's the right way to take, the right direction to take the game in. And there are definitely good pros to it, as well as some cons, and they've probably weighed it up and thought that the positives outweigh the negatives. Being able to do good translations, so translations will be a bit easier for them to be able to fit more information on the cards themselves, and to kind of create their own language within the game, which may actually help for future projects, right? For whatever is coming up, the Desert Haven, who knows, right? So it's just one of those things where we probably don't really like the change as much because we've been used to it for so long. We've had one full game, we've had an expansion, and we've had a spin-off game, all using these icons and words, and we've not really had too much of an issue, right? So people don't like change, generally speaking. So you see change and you kind of curious as to why, and if it's not completely evident as to why the game needs to change, you're going to question it. So it's a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, I think. People are obviously going to do that when this kind of thing happens from last week. I'm still on the fence. I feel like I need to play with it, and I do think there needs to be some changes, but because icons are coming in, it's not going to stop me from playing the game, and I hope it doesn't stop other people too. There will be some people who this will be a deal breaker for, and I'm sure that they've thought about that in their approach, and that was something that came up. So all we can do now really is to give our honest feedback on them, to try and improve them, and give community feedback, and just say what you would like to see. So I really do encourage people to engage with the Kickstarter and just, hey, post your comments and really try and get your voice heard if you've got an opinion on this. So but yeah, it's going to be happening, and it's here to stay. So now it's just about making the best kind of icon system that we can get, and the game's going to be awesome regardless. So it's just something that we're going to have to learn and get used to the change, but let's just make sure that we can get it as good as it could be. So give all your feedback on the Kickstarter campaign. Let's move down to the character mats. So in general, I loved the character mats from last time, so I don't really have many comments. They've just weathered it to make sure it fits, which is good. They've changed the traits to now be above your health here at the bottom rather than being at the top. Absolutely fine. They've also changed the back of the board slightly. They've changed the wording now to support defense control. It used to be healing, protection, and conditions. I think that's a good change, just because players generally use these terms. They are a bit generic kind of terms, but I think that shows that in terms of game terms, these are much more well known, and I certainly refer to these kinds of qualities in this way. So yeah, so makes my life easier. I don't have to worry about saying healing, protection, and conditions. So yeah, I like the change. Yep, simple change. That's all good. And kind of last up, the only other thing we got is it's going to be a big, heavy boy. So we kind of knew that it was going to be big. Now, I don't know what the original Gloomhaven weighed, but I'm going to guess that this is heavier. So prepare your shelves, folks, because this is going to be a beast. But it's going to be a lot of content in there. It's going to be it's going to be a crazy sized box, maybe the biggest board game box ever. I'm pretty sure there are other games that have got that title that have lots of miniatures. So, but in terms of a single box, it's going to be nuts. So yeah, pretty awesome to see. Pretty awesome to see that. So there we have it. I did want to just do a really quick video for you guys on what my thoughts are with this new update. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'll be very interested to see, because this is going to be a change that is going to polarize some people. And now that we are definitely moving forward, that's been confirmed. We are moving forward with the ability system and the icon system. That's going to be the template going forward. So I think, now's the time really for us to try and get it to a point when we can, help as many people play the game as easily as possible. So definitely get involved in this one if you have strong opinions on it. I would. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you did like it, toss it a like and consider hitting subscribe. I make lots of Gloomhaven content, guides, and Gloomhaven digital content, so you can check that out in my channel down below. Also, I stream regularly on Twitch at twitch.tv/MandatorQuest, where I stream Gloomhaven pretty much exclusively nowadays on Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. So come hang out, chat Gloomhaven, and chat Frosthaven. Let me know your thoughts there. But apart from that, guys, thank you all again so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.
I think still, yeah.
Oh,
Scout
that's the blessing from Scout. That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?